Hello, my name's David and I am the partner of your head teacher, Mrs. Tomlins. I work as a COVID tester, as a handyman and sometimes as a musician, and I conduct young voices. I am very excited to bring you Chapter 10, The Park. By 5:15, Eric and Roy were in the park, on the grass, beside the pond, licking ice lollies. Eric's lolly was laid out on its wrapper so he could reach it. It was his favourite flavour, lemon and lime. Roy, without too much either or this time, had bought the lollies from the ice cream van at the park gates. Eric licked the cool, delicious lolly with his rough tongue. It tended to slide around, and he was obliged to steady it with his paw. Roy lay on his side, crunching his lolly and watching Eric. This is good, he thought. Despite Eric trailing most of the way, he was somehow under the impression that coming to the park was his idea. Suddenly, Eric's lolly skidded from its wrapper. He nosed it back, but by now there were bits of grass stuck to it. Eric considered the problem, then looked pointedly at Roy and then at the lolly. He repeated this a couple of times until Roy got the message and removed the grass. "Dogs eat grass, you know," said Roy. When he had finished his lolly, Roy put his jockey cap on Eric to see how it looked. Eric shook it off. Roy got to his feet and began swinging from the branch of a nearby tree. He gazed about. The park was fairly empty. However, on the opposite side of the pond, two girls and their dog were playing with a ball. The dog was leaping around and racing back and forth between them. Roy glanced down at his dog and for the first time felt a twinge of discontent. Eric was still sitting there, licking away and looking thoughtful. It was bad enough that he always made his lolly last the longest when he was a boy, but to do it as a dog! Meanwhile, Eric, being Eric, was beginning to make plans. The thoughts in his mind were, how long will it last this time? When will I change back? And, most worryingly of course, where? If they stayed in the park, he could always hide in the bushes and get dressed there. But what about Roy? And Roy's tea? And Roy's mum? Roy, however, wasn't thinking about his tea or his mum. "Come on, Eric, dogs are supposed to wolf things up." Whereupon Eric did eat up, but in his own time. He proceeded to wipe one slightly sticky paw on the grass. He remained thoughtful. Roy's exasperation grew. "Tear about a bit," he said. "It is a park, you know." He tossed his jockey cap in the air and caught it on his head. "Here, jump this bench." Roy pointed towards a park bench and, in case Eric hadn't got the idea, jumped it himself. "See? Easy." Eric trotted up to the bench, climbed onto it and sat down. He meant it as a joke, but Roy took it badly. He pushed his hands in his pockets and kicked moodily at a plastic cup which lay on the ground near a litter bin. Then, after a while, he began to dribble with the cup around the bench, and he said, "Come on, tackle me." This time Eric didn't wait, but took up the challenge. He leapt from the bench, chased after Roy and made a grab for the cup. Roy eluded him. Eric grabbed again. Again, Roy slipped past. Eric held off, jockeying for position, waiting his chance. Roy showed neat footwork and began a commentary. "Now it's Kenny Dalgleish coming through the middle. Only Alvin Martin to beat." Eric darted in, grabbed the cup in his mouth and scampered off. Then it was Roy's turn to chase and Eric's to dodge about. As soon as Roy discovered it was hard work getting even close to Eric, Dalgleish was substituted and Shilton took his place. "And it's an open goal. The crowd's going mad. Only the keeper to beat." Roy now proceeded to hurl himself around in a series of desperate saves at the striker's feet. He grazed an elbow and a knee, but hardly noticed. Eventually, with Eric nowhere near him at the time, Roy gave a leap of pure animal spirits. Sometimes, even under normal circumstances, the difference between boys and dogs is not great. Roy tumbled over and over on the grass. He hadn't had fun like this for days. Neither had Eric. In fact, for the moment, the two friends had quite forgotten the situation they were in. They were just a fairly wild boy and a rather civilized dog fooling around. Then, suddenly, with Eric off his guard, Roy lunged forward and swept up ball and player in a rugby tackle. "Foul!" yelled Eric, or rather, as it turned out, "Woof!" Then Roy did a lap of honour. "This is a cup match, Eric," with the cup itself held high. Then something else happened. A child's pedal car came into sight from the direction of the park gates. It was bright red with a Mickey Mouse face on the front. A small irate boy was running after it, and the driver was Hopper. The small boy, who was, of course, the owner of the car, was Malcolm Biggs, Kenny's little brother. Behind him came Kenny himself and 4 or 5 other boys. They were carrying items of cricket gear: bat, batting gloves, pad, wicket, bails, and tossing a ball between them. Hopper came to a halt. His face was flushed. It was hard work pedalling. Malcolm Biggs, usually known as Malky, was frowning but not crying. He tugged at his brother's t-shirt and pointed at the car. "My! Malky was 2.5 and well able to say mine. Being the brother of Kenny, it was his first word. However, in moments of stress, his sense of grammar often deserted him, and my was the most he could manage. Kenny looked down at Hopper's solid body jammed into the little car. He did what he could. "Come on, Hopper, you'll make him cry. You'll break it." Hopper stayed where he was and considered his options. What sort of mood was he in? Hostile or friendly? Then, up ahead, he noticed Roy and Roy's 2 bags and Roy's dog. Hopper's arrival had broken the spell for Roy and Eric. Eric had immediately recalled his plight. Roy had immediately looked at his watch. He was late for tea. And the grass stains on his shirt. What would his mum say? He picked up the bags and began to slink off. He had no need to speak to Eric. He was slinking off too. It was the normal Rolfe Street primary response. When Hopper arrived, you left if you could. Hopper, however, had other ideas. "Hey, Ackerman, come here." Reluctantly, Roy turned and approached Hopper. Eric followed. "What's all this? Them your bags? Where's Banks?" "Carrying his mum's shopping," said Roy. But Hopper hadn't finished yet. His main question was still to come. "This your dog?" No," said Roy. "It's the one you were asking about?" "Yes." "Outside the fish shop?" "Yes." "And it's not yours?" "No. He sort of followed me." Roy, ill at ease, lowered the bags to the ground and stood, twiddling with his cap. Eric did his best to look as though he had just followed Roy. Hopper looked suspicious. Then Malky, distracted for a time, took up again his plaintive cry, "My! And Kenny said, "Come on, Hopper." And Hopper, to the dismay of Roy and Eric and the delight of Malky, climbed out of the car. Then Malky climbed in, beaming at once, and pedalled off. And Hopper said, "I know this dog." The next few minutes were an uncomfortable period for Roy and Eric. Hopper was suddenly keen to show off what Eric could do. "He's a smart 'un." He looked around for something to throw. "Give us a bail, Dobbo." "No," said Dobbo. otherwise Philip Dobson, the owner of the bales and most of the gear except the bat. He and another boy were pacing out the pitch and knocking in the stumps. "Give us a bale!" When the bale was handed over, Hopper said, "Watch this, Kenny," and tossed it towards Eric. "Catch!" Eric made no move except to raise his head and watch the bale disdainfully and see it fall. "Pretty good," said Kenny. Hopper tried again. Again Eric failed to move. "You catch it," he thought. Kenny had a whispered word with Roy. "Is it your dog?" "Yes and no," said Roy. "And where is Eric?" Roy shrugged his shoulders. "Hard to say," he said. Hopper, meanwhile, had become displeased. "What's all this?" He looked accusingly at Roy. "What have you been doing to this dog?" Nothing," said Roy. He knelt down and pretended to tie his shoelace. "Catch it, Eric! Hopper's going to beat me up." Fortunately, by this time the demands of the game were beginning to take Hopper's attention. The stumps were in and Clive Smart was taking guard. It was his bat. "I'll bowl," said Hopper, at which point Roy seized his chance. In a sudden burst of overacting, he stared wildly at his watch. "Is that the time?" grabbed the bags and scurried off. Eric followed. "Hang about," said Hopper. But it was a half-hearted demand. His suspicions were still aroused, but he also wanted to bowl. Eric and Roy kept going. At high speed they made their way around the pond, meaning to leave by the top gates. Roy suffered in silence the banging of the bags against his ribs. Eric ignored the urge to bark at the ducks as he went by. When they were well clear, Roy paused for breath and to swap the bags over. "Listen, let's go to my house. I'll sneak you in." "Woof!" agreed Eric. He thought of that too. It was the best solution. Roy shouldered the bags again and glanced back at the cricketers. Clive Smart, it seemed, was out. Hopper was taking guard. It looked like being a long game. Hopper, of course, was not the easiest batsman to dismiss.